Good afternoon. Welcome to this February 25th, 2026 meeting of the Finance Committee. Madam Clerk, first thing on our order.
Mr. Chair, we will have the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
All right.
We need a second.
All right, we did not have an election of a chair on this agenda. Previously, the past couple of years, we have done that annually. If we want to do that, we can change our agenda to include that first up, or not.
So you're saying that the time is that
Traditionally, the past 2-3 years, and Commissioner Book can probably remind me, we've elected a new chair at the first meeting of the year, I believe, or we can roll along.
I'm good with either. Let's,
if we are now over the time that we need a chair, then I guess we need to appoint the chair. Sorry, this is my first time coming back after being off of the committee. You're the sitting chair.
Yeah, the past 2 years, I think.
For the past 2 years, okay. I am fine with the Mayor Pro Tem continuing to be chair if that is something that you wanted to do. So I can make that motion.
Otherwise, because it's not on here, I think we would just technically roll along.
Okay, well then, I'm comfortable with rolling along.
I'm coming with rolling along.
All right, Alex.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, buddy.
I'm gonna ask Commissioner Book. Commissioner Book, thanks for joining us. Because the past 2 years, didn't we at the first finance meeting, I believe in January, we did.
Yes, sir. I think we made you chair. I was just joining because I want to be prepared for next.
Absolutely,
But I think that's what we did at the beginning. Is we
Yeah.
started with our first meeting of the new appointments, and then I think we made a motion to have some continuity there.
Okay.
I would like to move Casey Willets be serve as chair of the.
Well, we have a motion. We have
Okay,
a motion.
yeah, let's solve the motion.
We have a motion on the floor. So, is
That's
there
a
any?
great
Is there?
subject, Chair,
Is there any? Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on our agenda?
Mr. Chair, no public comment.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. I can entertain a motion now to just.
Yep, yeah, that's fine. After adoption of agenda, I would like to move that we select Mayor Pro Tem Casey Willets as the chair of the Finance Committee.
Second.
All right. Is there any other discussion about that? I assume there's no public comment. Anybody burning public comment? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Madam Chair, what is our next agenda item?
Mr. Chair, we have the approval of minutes from the November 17th, 2025 Finance Committee. The Finance Committee approved the minutes from the November 17th, 2025 meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Chair, no public comment.
All right. Any other comments from the committee? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we next have the business discussion items. 2026-137, second budget amendment to the fiscal year 2026 general government finance and operating plan budget. The Finance Committee reviewed a proposed budget amendment resolution and, if acceptable, recommend that the City Commissioner adopt the proposed resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, as the clerk read, the second budget amendment, the first being back in December of this year, or the last year. A few things I wanted to highlight on this budget amendment. There are some changes to the authorized position level. I think chief among them are proposing to add 6 FTEs to the Gainesville Fire Rescue. This will, we believe, will be essentially a wash with overtime. This will be adding an additional firefighter position to each of the 4 shifts, and will overall, we believe, end up reducing the amount of overtime that we're currently having to run service because of minimum staffing levels. Chief Hillhouse is here and can speak a little bit more about that if desired. We have a few, I think, important revenue components to recognize the ICAC grant that the commission approved. That's on this budget amendment. We have some additional, we have the funding for the violence interrupter program from the Children's Trust on this budget amendment, as well as a number of other, more routine revenue pieces. I believe those are the main things. We do have some capital fund amendments related to some GCRA projects, as well as some of our other capital improvement projects throughout spaces. Largely, that's the bulk of the amendment, and I believe Ms. Teslia is going to walk you through the amendment.
All right, thank you. Ms. Teslia.
Good afternoon. For the record, Allison Teslia, the Director for the Office of Management and Budget. As the city manager mentioned, there are some FTE requests for the second amendment this year. The first one is Fire Rescue is requesting 6 FTEs, which will facilitate the appropriate coverage for the 2472 plan, and we're anticipating it will be offset by the reduction in overtime costs. The Department of Sustainable Development is requesting the addition of an FTE for a fire protection technician, which will review plans for compliance with fire and life safety codes and to review existing structures, facilities, and subdivisions. The funding for this is included within the budget amendment for the Florida Building Code Fund. Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs is requesting to unfreeze 0.75 FTE to create a compliance specialist position, which will coordinate the training and implementation that's required from the Department of Children and Families for compliance and statutory requirements. And then also something to note that's within the budget amendment is the reallocation of 1 FTE from the Office of Communication and Marketing to the Office of the City Manager into the Government Affairs and Community Relations Division. So if approved, the total authorized positions would increase from 1,485.75 to 1,492.75 FTEs. Okay, next we have the general fund amendments. It includes the fiscal year 2025 carry forward balances for projects and programs that were reconciled from year end. It also includes an interfund transfer into the general fund from the cemetery fund to cover additional general cemetery operations. There's also an interfund transfer to the fleet fund for vehicle purchases. And then we have 2 allocations of fund balance, the first one being for litigation expenses that were charged to the city by GRU related to House Bill 1645. And then the allocation of fund balance for the replacement of an obsolete postage machine. In the special revenue funds, we have some carry forward reconciliations for various grants, projects, and programs. And then we have appropriations for new funding for grant programs, charges for services for the transportation mobility program, and fines and forfeiture estimates for the new school zone speed enforcement program. The amendment also includes expenditure reallocations funded by existing appropriations and an allocation of fund balance for certain projects, which are detailed within the memo. And then in the special revenue grant funds, it also includes grant reconciliations based on the balances at the end of fiscal year 2025 and appropriations for new funding received within the current fiscal year. The detailed listing of the active grant awards and the adjustments are in attachment A. In the capital project funds, we have the creation of a new half-cent infrastructure surtax and housing fund. This was being created to better track the expenditures related specifically to the infrastructure affordable housing set-asides. And then it...
Slow down and read it.
I'm sorry.
Because this is kind of important for particularly knowledge of commission, this action.
Okay.
So just literally slow down and repeat that.
I will do my best. It also has the adjustment to move the set-aside balance and to appropriate the budget for fiscal year 2026. Also in the capital project funds, the amendment includes expenditure reallocations, which are being funded by existing appropriations, and an allocation of fund balance for certain projects, which are also detailed in the memo. For the proprietary funds, The only adjustment that we have is for the enterprise funds, and it includes funding for vehicle purchases and expenditure reallocations funded by existing appropriations, and an allocation of fund balance for certain projects detailed in the memo. And then for the internal service funds, within the fleet management replacements fund, we have the allocation of fleet management replacement fund balance for the purchase of a fire truck, which was new for fiscal year 2026 in the fleet replacement schedule. And then we have the interfund transfers for vehicle purchases that were mentioned previously for the general fund and the transportation fund. So I can go into any details or questions that you have. We have staff here to help answer questions as well.
Commissioner Eastman?
Yeah, sure. I guess I can start with the FTEs in particular, because that, of course, that creates ongoing, expenses year over year. And I see Chief Hillhouse already coming up to speak because he has most FTEs allocated to this. Chief, can you, so we have 2472 has passed about maybe 2-3 years ago. We've allocated FTEs since then. Why a mid-year increase in FTEs?
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair, great question. So to answer that question, let me start by talking about minimum staffing. So as directed by the commission, the fire department has a minimum staffing, which is noted in our standard of cover, adopted by the commission, and it says how many apparatus we're going to have on the road and how many employees are assigned to each apparatus. So this is our riding schedule for the day. On any day, we're going to have 44 firefighters that are on duty. And specifically, each apparatus has a specific minimum staffing. So our engines have 3, our towers have 4, our squads have 3, we have 2 district chiefs that are on duty, and then at the bottom we have 2 people that are assigned to the airport. So when we moved to the 2472 model, we did that by folding all of our employees into 4 shifts instead of 3, which took us to a staffing factor of 1. So we had a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning that each shift only has the 44 people that are assigned to it if we're fully staffed to be able to cover that. So that means that any time that we have somebody off, we have to cover that spot with an overtime position. So if they're off for parental leave, the normal vacation allocated by contract, sick leave, if they've been injured on duty, if they're assigned to a special project, that spot gets covered with overtime. So a normal employee, high risk with benefits, their cost is their salary plus 30%, 1.3 to cover all of their benefits that go along with that. When we cover that spot with overtime, the cost is time and a half. So it's 1.5. So by actually moving our staffing factor back above 1.3 is healthy for the fire service. So by us moving that staffing factor back up, we'll actually save 20% by not covering that with overtime and paying the employee to be able to do that. So that's what our request is. We have been trying to make this request for a couple of years, but they were not very good times to be able to ask to add firefighters as we were specifically cutting things. So this is, again, what we're trying to do. It's an overtime reduction plan to save cost by having an employee there to meet the minimum staffing. And the only other way for us to accomplish this would be to lower the minimum staffing, which would mean that we would take vehicles off the road.
Right. Okay. And then that would, and the minimum staffing is set by our, if I recall, it's our ISO level. We have, it's structured around a nationwide standard, correct?
It's based both off of accreditation and ISO standards.
Okay. And remind me what, when this was brought up from before, because during our last budget discussion, we were talking about freezing positions, unfreezing positions, certain things like that. And there was a discussion about taking a truck off the road, things like that. I mean, just remind me how this process has gone in previous budget years with you guys' request and how this has happened.
Correct. So when we have been asked to have a budget savings, That's really the one lever that we have. So we're not over on materials and supplies. The big thing that we spend money on is the people to be on the apparatus. So when we have to make large cuts like that, our only lever is really to stop a program or take a truck off the road. So this seems counterintuitive, but it's another way that we can save money. It's not a large amount of money, but the 6 positions that we're requesting, we expect that to save around $150,000 over an entire year.
Okay. And, all right, thank you for that. And then on the other FTE portion, I guess you have the sustainable development for fire protection technician, which makes sense to me, but the, one of which was an FTE that was moved in the city manager's office from community relations coordinator from the Office of Communications and Marketing. I mean, Mr. Manager, can you explain why you think that's the best use of an FTE? You guys have fairly limited FTEs within your office, so I would think that, deciding the best allocation of that would be pretty critical.
We do, Mr. Chair, and this is simply an existing position that we have that was currently housed in the communications department, moving it over to government affairs and community relations to support community first. Largely, their work is not changing. It's just where the cost center is being, where they're being charged to. So that it's pretty as simple as that, essentially.
Okay, and is you guys are going to be going out and searching for this position?
No, it's an existing employee.
Okay.
Yes, it's a filled position. Just moving it from one to the other.
That makes sense. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I have about FTEs. I can go over to some of the other folks if you have any questions about any of the other budget amendments.
No, I think, said most of it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Mr. Chairman.
I have a question about the FT. So sorry, Chief, yes, if you have to come back up. So this 6, some salary, some expected savings by bringing down overtime, which has been a big thing we've talked about the past roughly 3 years through budget cycles, is wanting to down, both on police and on fire, is bringing down overtime. I had kind of originally been told that the 24/72 would provide some opportunities for this potentially. And so that's why it makes sense to be talking about this, but still 6 and 150 in salary savings is, covers one, right? Roughly one position by the time it's all said and done, or not a full 2. So with all things
So
included.
the savings includes their salaries. So it's $150,000 savings on top of.
Thank you.
the
I just
salaries.
make sure I was hearing that right, because I was like, wait, that's not, okay. So the expectation is that this would be a wash, roughly a wash. This is what, essentially is okay. Okay. At least for now. And so I think one of my fears is that, are we going to actually see that? Because overtime, both in fire and GPD, has just remained this unchanging thing because of the nature of the work that has to be done and the size of force and the size of both departments. And so I just, what's going to be, that's perhaps a bad question. I will rephrase that. What internally, with whoever does your scheduling, right? Are they the ones saying that, yes, this really can work out, or is this just like a general formula with some expectations at the end? Is it like you've looked at your staffing as opposed to kind of a formula that perhaps you use or other people use to what spits out on the other end?
So what we look at is the average number of overtime positions that we're covering on a given day. And I'll put our writing schedule up here for the day. So if you look at the top portion, this shows the people that are on leave or the positions that are vacant. So we're still onboarding 7 firefighters that actually start next Monday. They'll go through the orientation process. So we still have some vacancies that are up there. We have people that are on light duty, sick, vacation, and administrative leave. And then if you look at the bottom, so that number totals 9. And then if we kind of move down a little bit, you'll see that we've hired 9 overtime positions to be able to fill those. So if we have an extra person, so above the 44 above our 44 minimum number of people that are on shift, if they are there, then they will take one of those overtime spots to be able to do that. So,
Okay.
if we have the extra people, it's impossible for them not to cover one of the spots that are there, and what you get is the 20% savings to be able to do that. What I can't promise is how many people are gonna be on parental leave, how many people are gonna be injured, or something like that. So I can't tell you that, it'll go down because there are some factors that are outside of our control. What I can tell you is that if we have above minimum staffing, it will offset overtime, it will save the 20%, and if we do nothing, then we'll continue how we have been continuing.
Okay, and you led me to my next question, because I've been wondering about, because I remember you had some vacant positions, a new cohort coming in. After that, how many open, vacant firefighter positions do you have?
0.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand, and then where the potential saving, what we're going to see this fiscal year versus, because it takes time unless you've got perfectly trained people who just happen to, right, who want to switch departments, right, and come over to Gainesville.
Even with that, it still takes a 7-week orientation.
Right.
For them to be able to orient them to our specific equipment to be able to do that. So when we finish this 7-week orientation, that will get us to baseline. So we'll have somebody to fill all of the current positions. You can see that today we have three firefighter vacancies and 1 lieutenant vacancy that's not there. So the 7 people that we hired will get us to a wash. That means we're still covering everybody that's off with overtime.
Okay. So any potential savings, maybe not be happening this fiscal year, but as Commissioner Eastman was saying, this is setting us up for future budget years where it's there. If it does work and overtime is reduced, then it seems somewhat sustainable. That's a bit of a question, just at least with my experience looking at the overtime. I just worry a little bit because overtime seems like something that's just, it grows and grows and grows, and we just have trouble every year. But perhaps with more positions is what you're saying is with these more positions,
So-
that was what will enable you, particularly with the 2472, will enable you to start to control overtime more.
Correct, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. So the answer is yes. So the healthy staffing factor is 1.3. That's what gets us to a position where we have people to be able to cover whenever people are off, but it's not more where you would have extra people when no one is off. So we're currently at a 1.
Okay. I think that answers that for me. Thank you, Chief Hillhouse.
Don't go too far.
All right, let's, Commissioner Engel.
2 questions. One, just to make sure I understand kind of where we came up with that 1.5 and 1.3. Our benefits package, you don't get any extra benefits for working overtime, is that correct?
Just the pay, the pay.
That's what I mean, it's like you're not,
There are some things that are rolled in there. Some of that is pensionable.
okay.
You know,
So if you get like enough extra overtime, you can get some more pension credits or something along those lines. I'm used to a bunch of different kind of hour-based benefit package. I want to make sure I get my head wrapped around that.
It's
Correct.
negligible. It's
Okay.
just the time and a half. But
So it's mostly just the actual pay that goes up. You don't get much more in your benefits.
Correct.
From working overtime.
and there's one asterisk to that, in that the firefighters actually don't make time and a half for the first 10 hours by contract. That's only the firefighters in the general contract.
Gotcha. And then second, depending on the type of job you take, sometimes you are hired with the understanding that you will be working some overtime. And you've got to calculate that into what they expect their regular salary to be. Are the firefighters all right with this? I mean, are they, I don't know if they're being forced into work more overtime than they want, or they're going to be cut overtime that they were led to believe they would be getting on a regular basis looking at this.
Nobody's been led to believe that there would be overtime available.
Okay.
We do order people in on a very regular basis. So we actually have to maintain 2 overtime lists. One is a mandatory list,
Okay.
So that we can allocate mandatory overtime fairly.
Oh, very good.
All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the conversation kind of touched on the pieces that I was going to mention, but I did want to reiterate that Chief and I spoke about this kind of at length about the need to be carefully monitoring this in terms of as we go forward, making sure that it has the outcomes that we expect, and making sure that we're keeping an eye on that staffing factor, that we're not falling into, I think, what has happened perhaps in the past where we have a staffing factor of 1.3, but then we add a unit or we expand the fire service and we're back down to a staffing factor of 1. So as Chief and I talked about, in terms of expanding fire service, we need to do that, within the budget process, talking to you all. So that's why careful monitoring and looking at that staffing factor going forward is going to be really, really key. And we are, it's on our radar for sure.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you said that, Mr. Manager, because I can't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but I do remember us looking over our long-term budget forecast, which I thought was important for us to do this last time, and we were able to bring that down to a difficult but manageable amount, looking at kind of looking at a less robust growth on the rolls than we've seen in recent years, which I think is reasonable for what we're looking at for this next year. When we approved the 2472 for the fire department, it was at a time of tremendous budget cuts of where we were looking across the board, and I think it was saying that we understand that there's that we need to staff up our fire department. We need to be able to compete with other departments in the area, and it was a lot of trust in saying there's very few other departments that do this. I don't know if there was any at the time or if anyone's taken it on since then.
There were 2 at the time, Mr. Chair, and since then there have been a lot of other fire departments that have followed suit.
That's great. And so, yeah, but I mean, just keeping our eye on that, because, making sure that that we have a fully staffed fire department is really important for our ISO rating. For everything else, it's one of the core services that we provide within the city of Gainesville. But just making sure we're keeping track of that staffing factor. And if we say that there's budget savings, I tend to believe that there's no free lunches in government or budgeting and anywhere else. But if we're saying that this is a free lunch for us, then I guess I'm looking forward to seeing that total savings at the end. But I think I'm comfortable going with what the city manager and the fire department have come forward with. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think Commissioner, I believe we just completed our recent ISO audit that they were here meeting with us, and but I don't think we have a report back yet. But they were here recently completing the ISO audit, and certainly a lot of these discussions, particularly about staffing, does factor into the ISO rating.
Commissioner Book?
I was going to say this time next year, what the finance committee may want to consider is what we did in the past, at least in the public safety arena, and you probably did, Chief, or you, Mr. Manager, is we basically we made a spreadsheet. It had how many positions you have allocated, because that's what you start. And then it was, what's the overtime for the agency during that period of time? And then you had to factor in a third category, and that third category was what was the bargainable increases to pay, because you can't do that you got to take that into consideration. What the overtime rate was, and then if it's actually going up or down. And so if you have that about this time, about midway through your fiscal year 2027 time frame, then you'll know, is it going up or is it going down if you have a real savings. So it might be something to consider for the succeeding year.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. All right, so I think we just really were talking most about the FTE, mostly on GFR side. And then I think we're going to have a conversation about some of the other pieces. Do you want to start off, Commissioner Eastman?
Yeah, sure. I mean, on the same topic of discussion related to our budget, the allocation of fund balance, 1.7 million taken out of the allocation of fund balance. I'm sure you went over that briefly, but I'm trying to also, similar to FTEs and that growth over time, try to keep an eye on our fund balance and make sure that we're not taking too much out of reserves. Can we talk about that? Where is that 1.7 million coming from?
So the majority of the allocation of fund balance is actually carry forwards from the prior year. So if you go down a little further under the expenditures, 1.4 million was the housing and community development, affordable housing set aside that we were just reallocating from the end of the fiscal year. So
Okay.
that's a big chunk of it. There was also the carry forward for the Vision Zero project, which was about 175,000. And then it was the demolition program. We were reallocating that from the end of fiscal year 2025. And then the other two allocations of fund balance were for the litigation expenses related to GRU, and then $10,000 for a postage machine that we're required to replace.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, so that just, so that 1.4, it's because, and this is the original ARPA dollars, correct? ARPA to general in FY '25, and now we were just carrying that forward because we're not done spending that. This is from the original 1.68.
Yes.
Okay, so that is something that hopefully we will spend, but this is an old promise we're making good on, and so budgetarily this is where we're going to see it. It really is just carried forward.
This was the reconciled balance at year end after the audit and everything was paid, and then we're putting it back to the program.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. I just want to make sure I say it so I can repeat it to other people when
When they
people ask,
ask.
whatever happened to the ARPA dollars, say, hey, it is a promise we have kept, it is there, it is spoken for, and we're gonna, and we've awarded those, so and those people are gonna
That's right.
build that housing and renovate, and we're gonna pay out, those invoices.
That's correct, and I think that was actually covered last week with that quarterly housing update with that allocation particularly, which I think the bulk of went to Eden Park for unit renovations, and then there was some money I think with the Hawthorne Heights and a few other affordable housing projects in that overall bucket.
Okay, great. So while we're talking about that, while we're talking about housing, so the infrastructure and housing fund, this is just an internal fund to more closely differentiate on street stations, strong foundations, the 10% set aside so that we will be able to both internally and management.
Exactly.
And also the commission will be able to have a number that we can kind of see and know and say, oh, this is how much we've collected, this is how much we've spent. I really like that so that we can communicate it a little better.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And we have, I think as the commission knows, we have put out solicitation for affordable housing provider partnerships to be able to help tie the funding that we have with the act, which, as you all know, is tied to acquisition of property. So the concept that the commission approved was essentially the city acquiring property or acquiring ideally developed units that we would then turn over or manage through a housing provider. And we put that solicitation out for other housing providers. And I think we might be in blackout, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But the second solicitation, I think, as Mr. Harris indicated, we did get a lot more responses this second time around. So it all is tied, and it is ultimately so that you all have a better picture of that funding. We have a easier way to be able to differentiate it from the other street stations funding. And so I know when how much money do we have in that account? Yeah, I have a ready-made answer without having to look at how much we've acquired and take 10% off. So, yep.
I think it's a good idea. Okay. All right. So then, I do have some questions about special revenue. Do either of y'all have the questions about any of the special revenue before I? I want to ask about the estimated new revenue from school zone speed enforcement program. So that's because we do expect this to start in this fiscal year, and
I believe they're expecting it to kick off within the next couple months, so we were just putting like a placeholder there. That's why it's only a couple $1,000s.
so mostly it's just to get us in the habit for future budget year. Is that kind of the idea? I tend to not want to estimate future revenue, only future expenses.
Well, we wanted to be able to have a budget there in case there are expenses that we have to pay, because if we don't have anything there, we won't be able to pay any type of expenditures that may occur.
Then it would be
That's why we went with a very conservative amount, a very small amount.
okay.
Yes.
Okay, okay. It is very small, and it will set us up for the future. Okay. And then just the use of fund balance, the allocation of fund balance for various expenditures. So, well, that's on the revenue side, right? Well, it says use of. So, can you just go down that again a little slower?
Sure.
You'll notice that anytime we talk about fund balance, we have been very interested because max, minimum, and what we've been working through this past couple of years with somewhat restricted revenues, and we all have probably differing opinions. But one thing we're very
Oh,
keen to
absolutely.
know: what are we spending out of just truly the above and beyond excess versus where that number is. So if you can just kind of repeat that.
Sure. So on the revenue side, we just put one line because there's so many things. And when you look at the expenditure side, we put there that, it's an allocation of fund balance. So it was very clear on the expenditure side. A good portion of the fund balance, I believe, is related to the GCRA because they had a little bit of fund balance. So we're making sure we're putting it back into the program. Let me see. And then some of them were carry forwards. So there was carry forward in the College Park Redevelopment Tax Increment Fund. And let me see. I should have highlighted them. We put an allocation of fund balance for the street reprogram in the GCRA. There's also some reallocations of funding for the Citizens Field and MLK revitalization project. And I feel like that's the majority of them.
Okay. Thank you for spending some time just
Oh, yeah.
going back on that. Because we haven't really seen the full audit to know, right? We haven't discussed it to know where we ended on fund balance, and so we're kind of in a gray zone of when we're talking about fund balance at all. I know that I'm in a bit of a gray zone. All right. Any other questions in the grants? Going down. Some of these grants are our normal grants, correct, that we have typically received? Or any of note? I know that Commissioner Book likes to make sure we talk about the grants of note.
Mr. Chair, the perhaps the largest grant is the ICAC grant that you all approved. That'll go. That's a state grant. I think our largest single state grant at GPD, and we'll help fund some technology, some positions, and I think it's a very good story to tell. We were, I think, one of only a few agencies that received that grant, and it's I think upwards of almost $600,000 in total. So,
Okay, thank you. I did have a question just about the tree mitigation funds on the Bivens Arm Marsh? Just how do we describe using tree mitigation funds on that marsh restoration project? So that we can fairly talk to, our neighbors and residents about that.
Good afternoon, Brian Singleton, Interim Chief Operating Officer. The Tree Mitigation Funds Ordinance authorizes the expenditure for removal of any invasives and then replanting of any type of plants that support the urban forest. So part of the marsh restoration project is to restore that wetland into the historic marsh that was drained circa 60s or 70s. There's a lot of woody and invasive species that has grown into that area. All that needs to be removed and then replanted with marsh species.
Okay, so none of this is for any kind of earthwork. This is for
Strictly the landscaping component of that job.
perfect. Okay, thank you. That helps me understand, Mr. Singleton.
Mr. Chair, the other, I think, grant maybe that we can highlight is the, as you all know, we received $150,000 from the Children's Trust to support and fund the violence interrupters. I know there was discussion, I believe, at the last meeting, or maybe it was the meeting when we were actually discussing the Gun Violence Alliance strategic plan and about sort of Impact GNV, and I had mentioned that, the Impact GNV sort of umbrella had multiple different funding sources, some general funds, some ARPA, CTAC funding is certainly one part of that. That's not a guaranteed funding source. It's an application that we would need to, to renew, annually. And so that would be something that I would expect that we perhaps will talk about with this budget cycle, particularly I think in the discussion at the commission about sort of what does Impact GNV look like post expiration of ARPA funding, and the CTAC funding would be, certainly part of that discussion as well. So.
Okay. Colleagues, are there any more questions about any of this for this budget amendment? I know there's still a lot of stuff in here. Some of this we've definitely seen and we're aware is coming up that we just need to actually do the budget amendment for. Anything else? No?
I'm good.
Commissioner Eastman.
Then I would like to move that we recommend that the city commission adopt the proposed resolution.
All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this budget amendment?
Mr. Chair, there's no public comment.
Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Teslia. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, we are on to 2026-138, fiscal year 2026 first quarter budget monitoring report with projections through September the 30th, 2026. The Finance Committee receives the fiscal year 2026 first quarter budget monitoring report.
All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Teslia, would you like to kind of talk a little bit about this? Thank you.
All right. Do I need to say my name again for the record? No.
I got it.
I just want to make sure. All right, so this report is an update on the fiscal year 2026 budget relative to actual revenue and expenditures for the first quarter of the fiscal year. Based on the analysis comparing the preliminary year-end actual to budget revenues and expenditures, the general fund is projected to end the fiscal year with no surplus or deficit. At the end of the first quarter of the year, the budgeted revenues have been about 42% collected. The majority of them being the property tax revenues because they come in earlier in the year. For the expenditures, we're at about 27.5% as of 12/31 for the expenditures for fiscal year 2026. And then the Ironwood Golf Course, the golf course operations experience, it looks like there is an operational deficit as of 12/31, but the majority of that is related to the fact that we encumber the funds at the beginning of the year and then they spend them throughout the year. And then there was also no concessions revenue for the first quarter of the fiscal year because they're in that transition. So we'll be continuing to monitor the golf course funds. So let's see.
Yeah. No, I'm good. Okay.
But I can't.
Yeah. Commissioner Eastman.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at any numbers that jump out at me, and the main
Sure.
one, I'm sure there's a good answer, but non-departmental in the first quarter is now at 57% as a percentage of the adopted budget. That just jumps out at me as, you would expect things around 25%. Why is that at now 57%?
It's probably also because in the general fund, we encumber things that we would pay throughout the year. And a lot of times there are certain things that only happen at one time of the year.
Yeah.
And they might happen in that first quarter. As we go throughout the year, we'll be continuing to monitor where everything kind of lies.
Yeah. No, I understand that first quarter can get a little wonky, because
Yeah,
it's just
it
a very
looks weird
small area.
sometimes.
Yeah. Then I don't have any more questions.
Okay. To that same end, I guess particularly for technology is low because we're in the process of hiring out in our technology department, my understanding.
Correct.
So a lot of that is salaries that, we're budgeting for, we're hoping to get all those people, but they're not necessarily all there.
Well, and this was as of 12/31, and we approved their positions in December. so there wasn't enough time to.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because we actually did add it in, that's right. 'Cause
That was
that's
it- that was in
amended the budget.
December,
Yeah,
so-
so very much. So.
Very much so.
We gave them money, and they got to finish hiring those out. Thank you for.
And you'll actually get the March 5th agenda, you'll get a update from Mr. Nagy about the status of the IT department.
Perfect.
You'll get a little bit of discussion about that.
Perfect. All right. I liked having this report so we kind of know as we talk about different things as we change the budget a little bit during the year. So I appreciate this, Ms. Tesley. Are there any further questions about this? I think this was just informational. Right? So there's no other questions or comments from the public regarding this?
Mr. Chair, there's no public comments.
It's just informational. All right. Thank you, Ms. Tesley. Madam Clerk, our next item.
Mr. Chair, we on to 2026-152, update on GRU/city financial transactions. As of December 31st, 2025, the Finance Committee received a report from Financial Services regarding the first quarter of the fiscal year 2026 balances with general government and GRU as of December 31st, 2025.
All right.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dennis Wen, Director of Financial Services, and I'm here to provide an update with GRU and general government transactions through the first quarter of the fiscal year 2026. I want to start off with the general. This is I've done this presentation a couple times, so I'll try to make it brief. But if you have any questions, you can stop me at any time. And I'd like to start out with the general services contribution, which for the first quarter we've collected about 1.6 million. This was reduced by legal fees and the county streetlights again. Those two amounts amounted to $320,000 for county streetlights and $242,000 for legal fees. So this puts us about $1 million in total legal fees and several $1 million in county streetlights to date. These deductions were budgeted for in the 2026 budget, but we've pretty much extended that as far as we could. The indirect cost allocation, this was also unilaterally reduced by the GRU authority. We are collecting roughly less than half of what we were collecting last year, but again, we did budget for this in 2026, and so far to date, we have collected $234,000, which is exactly 1 quarter's worth of what we've budgeted for 2026. Utility taxes, there's anything out of the ordinary here. We've collected, for the first 3 months of fiscal year 26, we've collected almost $4 million out of the budgeted $16.4 million, so everything is current on utility taxes. Next, we have stormwater and solid waste fees. We've collected 6.3 out of the $23.8 million budgeted. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. We're trending in the right direction and we're on track with the budget. Then we have pension obligation bonds. GRU provides the support for the debt service payments for the pension obligation bonds. We have an MOU, an understanding with GRU for what their portion of these bonds are supposed to be, and currently they've paid 2.4 million out of the 9.5 million, so they're on track with those payments as well. Next, we have fleet and fuel services. So far, we've collected $942,000 to date, or through the first quarter, and out of the budget at 3.9 million. I don't see any a big divergence from the budget there. And then general insurance. So far, they've provided 1.1 million out of the 2.2 through the first quarter. We generally pay our insurance premium, so they did reimburse us for those, and that's roughly 44% of operations and premiums. So that's why they've paid most of their premium costs for the first quarter. And finally, we have miscellaneous services, which is just refuse, GPD services, and unemployment taxes. Since we're still processing payroll for GRU, they're reimbursing us for their unemployment taxes, and that amounted to $27,000 through the first quarter. So for transfers and charges for service to GRU, these are services that GRU provides to us and we pay them for. First of all, we have the IT service level agreement. So we budgeted 5.9 million. So far to date, we've paid 936 or 26,000. This is tracking to $3.7 million, which was in the SLA that has been signed by GRU. So we're going to be projecting under budget in this category.
Can you remind us, because we budgeted the 5.9, but after we budgeted is when the SLA was kind of finally hammered out?
That's correct.
Okay, and then we went with our IT department, and Mr. Nagy's been building it out, so,
That's right.
okay, thank you.
Telephone services, we've pretty much paid exactly 1 quarter's worth. GRU hosts our telecom and telephone services, so we just reimburse them for that amount, and that's 46,000 out of our estimated budget of 185,000. Solid stormwater management and solid waste billing services. This amount is based on the current MOU that we have with GRU. It's not a revised MOU. This is the one that we had standing with GRU, and that amounted to 206,000 that we are projecting to pay to GRU for the first quarter out of the projected 829. But if the MOU is ratified or modified, that number will change. And then again, we just have miscellaneous services. The majority of this was property insurance that GRU pays, and we reimburse them for.
Okay, and did we not budget that, or, I think I'm remembering this from last year.
We do budget for it. I just couldn't extract it from
Got it,
the
okay.
general insurance fund. There's a lot of things going in there.
So it's hard for us to budget just this portion.
That's right.
Perfect, thank you.
So to sum this all up, as of the first quarter of 2025, we owed GRU about 1.4 million. This primarily reflects the IT services provided from GRU for the first quarter. This balance has not been settled yet. We're still working out some documentation kinks with GRU, but that's what we've accrued through the first quarter. Then just some other miscellaneous items that I wanted to include is just utilities expense, contractual services, connect free payments. These are typically accounts payable payments. We don't run these through our due to, due from schedule. We pay them immediately as we get those bills. So far we've paid GRU 1.6 million for those services. And similarly, the dark fiber connectivity payments, $27,000 for the first quarter. We are current with GRU in the interfund or our due to, due from statuses, but in accounts receivable, we do have $202,000 of a balance for right-of-way permit fees. I believe GRU is refusing to pay for these, so we do leave them on our books as a receivable. So far through the first quarter and some of the balance from last year, to date we are at $202,000 outstanding.
Okay, and that 202,000, if they paid that, does it go into general revenue, or does that stay within?
That goes to general
Department of
revenue.
Sustainable
Since it's a right-of-way permit fee, it goes to the general fund.
It goes to the general fund?
Yes.
But, Mr. Manager, in the Department of Sustainable Development, we're still down workers and employees, FTEs, from where we were a few years ago, correct?
Yes, we did reduce FTEs in that department. I think mostly on the general fund side, not the building fund side. I think generally we've added employees on the building fund side.
Okay. I'm just trying to link these together with if GRU would pay this, the ability for sustainable development to, better do their work.
Well, yes, that's always the case, but I would say in this case, the actual right-of-way permit and inspection is actually handled through Public Works Department.
sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so
I
they
know
are,
Public Works we could use.
absolutely, and and importantly, we are providing this service. We're just not getting paid for it, and so there is still ongoing coordination but there's not a permit and there's not a compensation for the staff time spent to actually service these inspections.
Okay, and Mr. Singleton?
Just to add to that a little bit, so the way the utility permit statute is set up, the charge can only be for the expenses actually incurred related to the inspections costs. So our permit fees are based on the staff time, the equipment, the vehicles to actually to review the permit applications and then monitor the work in the field for compliance. So
Alright,
it's,
so this
it's
is a
strictly
true
a
expense.
true expense cost, not any type of markup on top of it.
And since you're here, I can't remember, do we have current frozen positions in Public Works, or just that? What's our first new hire, should we get this money?
I'd have to talk to the Public Works team, but yes, there are several frozen positions in Public Works.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you so much, Mr. Singleton. Commissioner Eastman?
Yeah, I mean, just to make this point on the right-of-way permits, though, by the time I hit my button, we got, I think, very good response from both the city manager and Public Works Department. But one of the key jobs that the city does is we own about 400 miles worth of roads in the city of Gainesville. We have to keep those safe. We are responsible for maintaining them, and our residents expect to maintain them. And so that, GRU is the main one who digs into our roads at any given day. And so making sure that we can do that safely, that we're following state laws is, I think, one of the most critical functions that we do as a city. And so this isn't something we could just choose to not do and say this, organization that is now separate from us can simply, do what it would like with our largest investment as a city. We have to make sure that is maintained. And so that, that is a real cost we need to get that sorted at some point, because we are paying for that and they are utilizing it. And at the core of what they do, utilizing right-of-way for electric and underground sewer and underground water is the way that they make, that they do their business. So this is a pretty straightforward thing for them to pay for. Under the former GRU general manager, we were coming to a good agreement with it, where there was a way that we could have a discussion with them, give more flexibility to Gainesville Regional Utilities so that they could work with our staff to give them the flexibility that they need. And then after that manager left, we're now in a much different situation where all this has been dropped. But at some point, we need to get that back. I can't think. There's few things that our city does that's more important than maintaining our capital assets and our largest one is our roads. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Do you have anything else? This was the last slide, right?
No, that pretty much wraps it up. I do include a detail of transactions in the backup. It shows all of the transactions that had occurred in the first quarter. It's quite dense, but if there's any other questions that you have, you can ask me. It doesn't include any of the accounts payable transactions that I mentioned, so a lot of those are just utility bills, electric, and maybe other miscellaneous services that we have with GRU, but that is in the backup.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Just one more, just to highlight the point. We are now up to, I was surprised by this, up to $1 million, I guess, in legal fees now. This is legal fees that are being charged to the city of Gainesville. I think we sent a letter to the GRU authority asking them to be open and transparent about how that is being funded, where that is being funded. We have an old set of invoices, but we don't have anything. We don't know what exactly is going, where the money is going, who is in there, and I just find it incredibly inappropriate that we are being charged through this general fund transfer reduction for a lawsuit that we are not bringing, they are bringing against the city of Gainesville to stop the charter referendum from going into effect. Negotiating costs with attorneys that I don't know if they're, if they're double billing. I don't know what the costs are. I would imagine that the negotiations are probably not particularly robust, since they're the ones doing the negotiation with the law firms, and we're the ones paying the check. I'd imagine that's how we got very quickly up to $1 million, but I think it's inappropriate. I know we've already talked about this ad nauseum, but it's now their opportunity to make that point. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Any other? Well, this was just an informational item, I believe. Correct? Yes. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Nguyen, for your presentation. Madam Clerk? Our next item?
Mr. Chair, there was no public comments. We're on to 2026-162, fiscal year 2026, frozen position report. The Finance Committee receives the fiscal year 2026 financial positions, frozen report.
All right, Ms. Teslia?
Okay, so this is for informational purposes only. Commissioner Book asked for this, I believe, last week when there was discussions about unfreezing a position. So this provides a detailed listing of the frozen positions that were adopted for fiscal year 2026, which was 30.75 FTEs with an estimated 2.5 million in cost savings. So far during fiscal year 2026, changes to this list. GPD requested to unfreeze the body-worn camera administrator in exchange for a sworn police officer, which created some cost savings. And then the City Commission recently approved unfreezing the compliance manager position for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And then also in the second budget amendment, there's a request from PRCA to unfreeze .75 recreation assistant position to be utilized as a compliance specialist to meet the DCF compliance and statutory requirements. So.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Brooke, you had a question about this. Do you have anything?
No, I just think this is really helpful in a mid-year to figure out what the cost savings are related to positions, and then for the manager to determine, are there any positions, just like what we're doing, that probably cost us more by freezing them than putting them in operation. I think that the auditors talked about a potential position that they may be coming through you, I think, to talk about. Are there any other positions here that we are likely to see as a commission that you feel that are likely to be unfrozen or recommended to be unfrozen?
I would say at this point it's probably a little bit premature to. I would love to unfreeze all of them and have the funds to be able to do so. But at this point, I would say it's a little bit premature to really kind of get into what we may or may not recommend. I could tell you that we've had a number of conversations between Chief Moya and myself and GPD, as you know, is actively trying to recruit for existing vacancies, and so that's something that I think is continuing. But at this point, I think, as I mentioned the other day or last week, any discussion of this I think will really kind of be best done through the budget process. And where you have a more sort of full picture of not just these specific departments, but overall operations, and where we may or may not be able to add staff. Hopefully we're in that position and not the other, so, yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And so essentially halfway through our fiscal year, we're realizing at the City of Gainesville just over 1 million in cost savings by what we've done there. Sometimes freezing is not necessarily cost effective, but it does give us some idea of where our budget is. So I appreciate giving the time, and I certainly appreciate you all putting this together in short order.
I agree. I think it's a good thing to have in front of us because we budgeted, and sometimes when we're budgeting, we're doing the chunks, this department, this department, this department where it's frozen, to see them all in one. And it may have been in the budget book in one place. I forget. But it is good to see it all in one place so we remember which departments we previously had envisioned more work for, and they are either not doing it or most likely spreading some of it across people who are already spread thin. So it is good to just see it all in one place. So Commissioner Book, thank you for requesting this, and Mr. Manager and Director Tesley, thank you for having this here, and I'm sure other commissioners will also. It's a nice reminder of everything. So. Colleagues, are any other comments about this or questions? No? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this or anything we may have missed?
Mr. Chair, there's no public comments. Next would be the member comments.
All right. Colleagues, any comments? Commissioner Eastman, you got yours out? No more GRU comments?
We had a whole item on GRU. I have to get them all out then.
All right then. Mr. Manager, anything we need to know between now and our next finance meeting of May 27th? We will, between then and now, we will have our finance retreat, or our budget retreat.
That's
correct?
cool. Yeah, our next budget, or our budget fiscal retreat is actually March 26th, thank you, 26th. And then we will have, your next regular city commission meeting on the 5th, and then we'll have a gap until that fiscal retreat, which would have been your second GPC of the month.
And we will have our audited FY25 financials at that
Correct.
time? Okay. Do we have it sort of? Is it floating around or
I don't
not quite yet?
believe so. I don't, Sir Wayne.
Just to give you an update, we are wrapping up the audit now. I should have a draft this week. I'm not expecting any findings or audit issues, so it will be a clean report.
Well, that's good to look forward to. We're going to hold you to that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. If there's no other comments, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.